Hi guys. This is going to be a bit of an indirect one, because I think that I don't understand some of the issues going on involving safe spaces well enough for me to weigh in on the individual situations, and I think they're probably rapidly changing. So I want to talk in general about the idea of safe spaces. Before I forget, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K. You allow me to talk about this stuff that doesn't, optimize well on search engines because it's not about a specific drama. But there have been at least two that I've heard of recently. I'm sure there are more of events making main, like, popular panels safe spaces. In one case, I understand that cisgendered men are not allowed. That seems to be the main one. So if you're trans, or if you're a woman, or non-binary or genderqueer, you can attend, but a cisgender man can't. This is a terrible idea, simply because who's going to door check? Who's going to sit there and see a guy who they think might actually be cisgender, but maybe they're not? Some people look masculine, for lack of a better term, but don't identify. Just, I don't appear androgynous. So if you didn't know me, if you just saw me looking around, you'd think I'm perfectly gender conforming, especially when I do the pinup stuff. But my brain does not function, low agreeability, high systemization. That's not female brain, what we consider female brain. So you can't screen for that. That's the first thing I have a problem with. You can't screen for that. It's, I know porn when I see it, to reference the court stuff with McKinnon and Dworkin back in the day. But the other thing is, this is not how safe spaces back in this consciousness, wokeness, all that stuff that started in the 60s and 70s and has continued on for this day. This isn't how it's intended to work. The idea of safe spaces are places you can retreat to fill yourself back up again, to go out and take on the big bad world. So if you want to do conversational groups where people can just sort of relax for a minute, that's one thing. But when it's a general interest topic, say a particular video game or a particular video game developer, you shouldn't be refusing access to anyone, because that just breeds resentment and breeds animosity and breeds the politics of aggrievement, instead of creating dialogue and making everybody feel a little less on their guard. So, I don't feel like I have to say any more on this. It's fairly cut and dried that this is a terrible idea. And yet it's becoming popular. And I know that's confusing for a lot of people. And my opinion on why it's becoming popular is people are reacting. They want to perform as woke. They want to perform as allies without actually understanding what things like safe spaces and these sort of structures are designed to do, and historically what they were created to do, and what the outcomes of creating discriminatory admission practices do. I believe systemic inequality is a very real thing. I do not believe you cure systemic inequality by creating a different form of systemic inequality. People respond better to the idea of inclusion than diversity. And if people aren't invited to the table, they never learn. There's plenty of infighting among feminist groups and trans advocacy groups to begin with. But it's very hard for people who are not directly affected by these issues to understand why they matter. A lot of people who don't have hate in their hearts come at this from, what's a big deal? People are people. Why do we have to slap labels on everything? And I'm choosing my words carefully here because I'm sure I'm still in trouble from what I said yesterday. We need to bring everyone along, because the reality is that there's actually an acronym for white, straight, cisgendered men. Like it or not, white, straight, cisgendered men are still overrepresented in the places that are actually making decisions that affect all of us. Governments, boards of directors, upper management at companies, and so on. Keep in mind now that straight, cisgendered men of color are also excluded from these safe spaces in this particular case. They are also increasingly in decision-making positions, notably Asian, South Asian, and Middle Eastern people and Persian people. So when you eliminate decision makers from an exercise, from a space, you are missing an opportunity to have them learn by exposure, to have them learn by empathy, to have them bring trans and non-binary people into the us instead of the them. And the only way we get movement, the only way we get progress on these issues is if we stop thinking about groups like trans people, like non-binary people as an other, and start seeing through experience, through actually meeting trans people and non-binary people, that the important word here is people. And a trans person has more in common than a cis person than they have different. Their gender identity is only one part of them. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that makes them human that is very similar to a cisgendered person, or identical in some cases to a cisgendered person. And when we use segregation as policies, which is essentially what it's a separate but equal concept, we know what that does. That always disadvantages the less privileged group. So these safe spaces may seem to be, giving them an advantage in the short term, but what it actually does is it actually disenfranchises, I know that's a technical word, but disenfranchises that group in the long run. You know, the blunt example of this is, people of color had their own drinking fountains. Is that a privilege? No, nobody saw it that way. It's the same thing. You know, I could go on and on because this is a really deep well, but I want to keep this short. I want to keep this impactful. It's just a bad idea. This is taking the idea of safe space rooms, which I don't see the harm in. So if you want to do it, if there's an interest for it, go nuts. But general interest panels should be general interest panels. If you feel the need to have safe spaces like that at your convention, it means your convention has a problem. And it means that, if there is a legitimate safety issue, you should be addressing that instead of just making one panel room segregated for, before a certain hour of the day or something like that. That doesn't solve the problem. That's just going to create animosity and make the problem you're trying to solve worse. And I admit, as a woman who would be welcome in these rooms, the conventions that are doing it have made me think, what's so bad at their conventions that they need to do this? I'm going to have to think twice about going to these conventions. And it's funny because one of them, I was actually considering about going to one of their one of their events. And now I'm like, is it really that hostile? Is it really that hostile that I need to be segregated off from my own protection? Like, what's going on here? How bad is it? And I know that wasn't intended to be the message they sent, but I'm just being honest. That is the message it sends. Sense? That is the message it sent to my sense. There we go. Thanks for watching. Gonna keep this one short. Have a good day. Patrons get tomorrow. You want to become a patron? Patreon.com/Lana K. Back for Feedback Friday. Thanks for watching.